There are moments in life when the universe grows unusually quiet, when the noise of daily existence falls away like leaves releasing from a branch in autumn, and in that sacred stillness something ancient and knowing makes itself present. You may have felt it recently, that particular kind of silence that is not empty but full, charged with meaning you cannot quite name but can feel moving through you like a current beneath still water. Heaven has not brought you to these words by accident. There is no such thing as accident when the soul is involved, when the deeper machinery of existence is working on your behalf, arranging encounters and revelations and moments of recognition that the logical mind might dismiss as coincidence but the heart recognizes immediately as something far more significant. You have been chosen to receive this message not because your life is without difficulty, not because your path has been smooth or your heart has been untouched by confusion, but precisely because you are standing at a threshold. Something is preparing to shift. Something that has been held in shadow is preparing to move toward light, and the angels who watch over the connections between human souls have taken notice of what surrounds you, of what surrounds the one whose heart beats in rhythm with yours even across whatever distance or silence currently exists between you. Before any question was asked, before the session could even properly begin, the psychic who held your image between trembling hands felt the room change. The air grew dense with presence, the way a forest feels before rain, thick with anticipation and something almost reverent. And in that charged stillness, words arrived that were not summoned but simply appeared, carried on a frequency that belongs to the realm beyond ordinary knowing. The words were these: "They will never accept you if you continue to hide from the truth." 7 words that landed like stones dropped into deep water, sending ripples outward in every direction, touching the surface of everything surrounding this connection. Your soulmate heard those words inside the silence of their own being and something in them trembled. Not because love had departed. Not because the feeling they carry for you has grown cold or uncertain. The trembling came from a different source entirely, from the place inside every human soul where old wounds live and old stories about worthiness are stored like letters never sent. They trembled because they are afraid. Not of you exactly, but of what they believe you would do, how they believe you would respond, if you were ever to see the parts of themselves they have spent years concealing, the chapters of their story they believe cannot be forgiven, the choices they made in moments of weakness or confusion or pain that they have rehearsed apologizing for 10,000 times in the private theater of their own mind. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes with carrying a secret not because you want to deceive the person you love, but because you love them so much that the thought of their disappointment becomes unbearable. This is the loneliness your soulmate is living inside right now. They move through their days carrying something heavy, something that sits just beneath every smile and every ordinary moment of living, a weight that intensifies whenever they think of you, whenever they imagine a future together, because the future they want so desperately to build feels like it is balanced on a foundation that might not hold. They wonder if they deserve that future. They wonder if you would still want it, if you still want them, once you know everything there is to know. Heaven sees this. The angels are not distant observers watching from behind glass. They are close, closer than breath, aware of every fear and every hope and every silent prayer that has gone up from the heart of the one who loves you. And what heaven holds about this situation is not judgment. There is no ledger being kept, no record of failures being tallied against a final accounting. What heaven holds is something far more generous than that, something that human hearts sometimes struggle to offer one another but which exists in infinite supply in the realm where love originates. What heaven holds is grace. Grace is not the same as excusing what was wrong. Grace does not ask you to pretend that nothing happened or that the weight your soulmate carries is without consequence. Grace is something more honest than that. Grace is the willingness to look at the full truth of another person, not the version they present when they are performing their best self, but the actual human truth of who they are, with all the incomplete chapters and the abandoned promises and the moments of being less than they wanted to be, and to choose to remain present anyway. Grace is the radical act of staying. Your soulmate does not believe they deserve that kind of staying. This is the heart of everything. This is the hidden room inside the hidden room, the truth beneath the truth. They have told themselves a story about what love requires, about the conditions under which love can safely exist, and in that story there is a list of things that cannot be known, a list of revelations that would cause love to evaporate like morning fog once the sun rises. They have placed themselves on the wrong side of that list. They have decided, somewhere in the accumulated pain of their history, that the specific things they carry are beyond the reach of forgiveness, beyond the reach of understanding, beyond the reach of a love that could survive full daylight. And so they hide. Not from cruelty, not from manipulation, but from a grief, stricken kind of love that has confused protection with concealment. They are trying to protect you from being disappointed. They are trying to protect themselves from the confirmation of their deepest fear, which is not that you will be angry, but that you will look at them with that particular expression of quiet withdrawal that means the love is leaving, that means the story is ending before it could become what both of you have felt it could become. But heaven is asking you to consider something. Heaven is asking you to sit with a question that carries more weight than it might first appear to carry. What if the fear is wrong? What if the story your soulmate has constructed about how you would respond to their full truth is not a prophecy but a wound? What if what looks to them like certainty about your response is actually the internalized voice of someone who hurt them long before you arrived in their life, someone who did withdraw, someone who did leave, someone who taught them through painful experience that the fullness of who they are is too much to be loved? We are all haunted to some degree by the responses of people who could not rise to the occasion of our complexity. We learn early that certain parts of ourselves must be hidden if we want to remain safe, if we want to remain loved, if we want to remain. And those early lessons, written on us before we had the language to question them, follow us into every relationship we build afterward. They whisper to us when we are at our most vulnerable. They dress themselves up as wisdom, as self-awareness, as protection, when what they actually are is the echo of an old pain that has not yet been healed. Your soulmate is not seeing you clearly right now. They are seeing the ghost of everyone who ever made them feel like too much or not enough. They are seeing you through a lens ground and polished by every loss they have endured, and through that lens you look like someone who will confirm what they have always feared rather than someone who might finally, gently, prove them wrong. This is why the angels are present. This is why heaven has arranged for these words to reach you. Not to give you a script for how to respond when the truth arrives, but to prepare your heart with a quality of openness that comes from understanding rather than from judgment. You are being invited to do something that is quietly heroic, something that does not look dramatic from the outside but which requires tremendous courage of the spirit. You are being invited to receive whatever is coming with more space than your soulmate believes you have. There is a timing to all of this that belongs to heaven and cannot be forced or manufactured by either of you. The truth that has been living in hiding cannot remain there indefinitely. There is a law written into the nature of authentic connection which says that what is real must eventually surface, that love cannot fully flourish in the presence of concealment, that two souls cannot truly find each other while one of them is still hiding from the other. This law is not punitive. It is not a threat. It is simply the physics of intimacy, the way that genuine closeness requires genuine seeing, and genuine seeing requires genuine showing. The shaking you sense in this connection, that particular quality of tension and unease, that feeling that something is waiting just below the surface of everything, is not the sound of love falling apart. It is the sound of truth preparing to rise. It is the sound of masks that have been worn for too long beginning to loosen, beginning to slip, because the soul that wears them is exhausted by the weight of them and because love, when it is real, creates a safety that makes the wearing of masks feel increasingly impossible. Your love is doing this. The reality of what exists between you is making it harder and harder for your soulmate to keep hiding, not because you are demanding anything, but because genuine love is its own kind of light and light makes darkness increasingly difficult to maintain. The angels whisper that what is concealed cannot remain concealed forever, and they mean this as reassurance rather than warning. They mean that the truth which is struggling to emerge is not the enemy of your connection but potentially the very thing that could transform it from something beautiful but incomplete into something whole. There is a version of the relationship that exists on the other side of this revelation that neither of you has been able to fully access because it requires what has not yet been offered. It requires the vulnerability of full seeing. It requires the courage of full showing. And it requires from you the grace of remaining present when someone you love becomes more human in your presence than they have ever allowed themselves to be. So what are you being asked to do with all of this? Heaven is not asking you to carry this as weight. Heaven is not giving you something to worry about or to analyze into pieces or to interpret through the lens of anxiety. What heaven is offering you is something simpler and more profound than any of that. What heaven is offering is preparation. The preparation of the heart that comes from knowing in advance that what is arriving requires not your judgment but your compassion, not your certainty but your willingness to remain in the question alongside someone who is terrified of what the answer might be. Keep your heart open without abandoning your own wisdom. Allow truth to arrive without rushing to meet it with conclusions drawn before the full picture has been offered. Remember that every soul carries unfinished chapters, pages written in the ink of circumstance and limitation and the particular kind of darkness that finds every human life at one point or another. Your soulmate is not the sum of what they fear you will discover. They are the fullness of everything they have been and everything they are becoming, and that fullness includes both the parts they are proud of and the parts they wish they could rewrite. Heaven sees the courage it will take for them to speak. Heaven sees the love that is the only reason they are still considering speaking at all, still considering the risk of being fully known, still holding on to the possibility that you might receive what they offer with more generosity than they have yet been able to offer themselves. And heaven sees you, standing at the threshold of a new chapter, being given the extraordinary opportunity to be the kind of presence in another soul's life that changes what they believe is possible about love. This is not a small thing. This is not an ordinary moment dressed up in spiritual language. This is genuinely significant, a turning point in the story of two souls who found each other across whatever odds and distances and complications stood between them, who recognized something in one another that could not be explained by logic, who are now approaching the moment that will determine whether what they have built together can hold the weight of full truth. Let your heart be guided by wisdom rather than fear. Let your response, when the moment arrives, come from the deepest part of you rather than from the part that is reactive or protective or wounded. The next chapter belongs to truth, and truth in the hands of love is not a destroyer. It is the very thing that makes the foundation strong enough to hold everything that wants to be built upon it. Heaven has carried you here. Heaven will carry you through. The silence is ending. The light is already beginning to arrive.